Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Event Industry News Podcast. My name is James Dickson, and a very good morning, afternoon, or evening to all of our podcast followers, whenever or wherever you are tuning into today's episode from. Our podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, Engage, powered by D2I Systems, winner of Best Event Management Platform at the 2017 Event Technology Awards. To learn how Engage can make your business more profitable, visit d2isystems.com/engage. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to our guests today. Not one, but two guests on today's podcast, which is always exciting for us to have two people on the episode at once. We're welcoming Chris Webb and Adrian Eaton. Chris is the co-founder and creative director of Push. Adrian is the co-founder and technical director of Push. And I suppose to be very, very ignorant and sum it up in a very, very brief sense of things, we're going to be talking about live streaming, and our guests today deal with live streaming. It's something that has been in the events industry now for several years. It's certainly become a little bit easier to do in simple formats in recent times. More people are utilizing it at their events. But to tell us a little bit about their own business, their own offering, let's come to you first of all, Chris. Tell us about Push, when and why it was founded.
Hi, when and why? We've been live streaming since, I think, Adrian might be able to correct me on this, I think 2009 to 2010. Right. And we built basically the live streaming platform for a company called Beat TV. And Beat TV basically film live festivals of big DJs all around the world. And from there, we basically had free reign on the technology side of how to play with live video. And from that, we've learned so much that we actually then decided that we'd build our own platform and push it out to as many people that want to use it as possible.
There we go. So when you were working for before Push and before you created your own dedicated platform, were the services that you were using to live stream in previous roles off-the-shelf services from other people? Were they also systems that you had designed?
No. We built everything from the actual ground up. What we wanted to do wasn't actually possible with that sort of technology at the time. Right. So AD, being the technical genius that he is, we both worked together and we basically built a platform that would do what we wanted it to do for live video streaming. So this was way before YouTube and Facebook started to go mental with it, basically. So yeah, we basically developed our own technology, and we found all the pitfalls and all the ways that production companies work and how and the problems that they face when they're doing live streaming. And so we've kind of built a product that basically has so much redundancy in place and has a lot of features basically that even today a lot of the live streaming tech doesn't have.
Sure. I suppose at that point, great opportunity to bring you in, Adrian, from the technical side of things, and just picking up on some of the things that Chris has said there. Redundancy and reliability, and one of the questions that gets asked by event organisers whenever the live streaming question comes into the equation. If you want to do it at serious quality and make it as best as it possibly can be, there is peripheral infrastructure and stuff that you have to then spend a lot of money on to make sure that you've got things like a great connection, and even things like physical infrastructure to make sure that cameras are in the right place. So when you were looking at creating your own system, what were some of the key features that you needed to make sure were built into it?
Sure. So we're taking a look at two different realms, as it were. You've got the low-end live streaming, where you just take a feed directly from a venue and send that out to a distribution partner like YouTube or Facebook. And then you have the traditional broadcast method of doing things, which is to use big satellite trucks, send that over via satellite to a central control room, and then from that control room send that to the various different channels you'd be sending out to. And we're trying to take that advanced broadcast industry sort of technology and see whether we can provide that to smaller enterprises so you can get that reliability and that redundancy that you'd get from a large physical infrastructure, but on a cheaper basis. And that's effectively what Push provides people with. It provides all those OB style, that style of infrastructure for a centralized control room, and we provide that via the cloud. So effectively all of our infrastructure is virtualized within Amazon Web Services, and then we effectively build controls and everything on top of that. So via your web browser, you can control content as it comes in. You can control the quality of it, make sure that your audio and video is all in sync, and all those kind of things that you do at a control center, but without all that physical infrastructure, because effectively we virtualize it and we make that infrastructure available to you via the web browser.
Sure, and I guess when we use the term live streaming now. And you mentioned, big, satellite broadcast trucks and things like that. Live streaming, in a sense, has been around for a long time because live television is in itself being live streamed. But with so many people watching TV now through the internet and through, apps and stuff on a device, I guess the lines between what was classed as live streaming and what is live television are very blurred now.
Exactly. So we're trying to provide smaller businesses, smaller events, and even that wouldn't have the resources of, say, the BBC to get a huge infrastructure down to sort of create that event, but provide those kind of tools that a larger broadcaster would have. And so we provide those tools again via Push, which is the platform that we then push that content to YouTube and to Facebook and to the various different locations that you're wanting to send that stream out to. And in a way, we also provide scheduling systems as well. So if you have an event that takes place over 12 hours or so with various different speakers, or even, so we come from a festival background, so you've got different DJs that play during the day. So those DJs would want to perhaps stream just their own sets to their own pages. And so we've got a scheduling system set up so that you can effectively take the stream into our system and then send out various different outputs to the various, the programs, as we call them, various different programs to the different distributions that are needed. And for example, this weekend, we've just come off the back of a huge weekend where we were streaming a festival. There's basically a festival in Holland, but 3 stages over 3 days, 440 different Facebook or YouTube distributions, and within those we then also add additional branding on top. So you've got all the pre-rolls and post-rolls that go out. So rather than it simply being a flat cut of here's the stream starts here and ends here, we can top and tail it with nice branding that pushes people we're using push this too much, but it encourages viewers to then visit the main site. So that increases the audience that effectively...
It's really about making content that is relevant, available to audiences. The more traditional way that things are done is kind of, would you say haphazard is probably the word, but the fact that we can break these full length 6-hour, 12-hour length live streams into individual programs, it makes basically the distribution of that event so much more simpler and more relevant to the audiences that it's going to. So it's not just going to a single endpoint of, let's say, the festival's page. It's going to the festival's page, the label's page, the label's YouTube channel, the DJ's Facebook page. It's going so many places. That's how we can get so many distributions from one single stream. It's like one stream, but it went to like 400 places.
Sure. And I guess most people's understanding in the events industry when you use the term live streaming will be of something that is very, very singular, in the sense where you may have a fixed camera at front of house that's focusing on a stage, if we take a music example, and if you happen to tune into that live stream at a point where the band is being switched over, you're pretty much just looking at a blank stage with nothing really happening and waiting for content to come around, because all they've got the capacity to do is have one camera in a fixed position that's just on a continual live stream. This, as you're explaining it, is something that is far, far more sophisticated than that, and is bringing that now very, very much closer towards, as you said, a professional outside broadcast where you can integrate advertising, you can cut to different stages, you can cut to different angles, you can vision mix, you can add ticker tapes, you can add sponsor logos, all of that sort of stuff around it that turns it into something that's far more polished.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And when this is being deployed, obviously it sounds like something that as a concept will be relatively easy to explain to organisers when you can talk about the stuff that we've already spoken to on the podcast today. From an actual a selling point of view, how keen are you seeing event organisers wanting to actually embrace something that allows them to do live streaming in so much more of a sophisticated way?
It's the problem we have at the moment. Is it a problem? It's the way that we're approaching this is it becomes an educational piece that we've got to do with a lot of people, because the industry traditionally does it one way, and we're coming in with a completely different angle and a completely different way to distribute and to basically produce those live streams. So
sure.
I mean, we do a lot of stuff for Boiler Room, and they just jumped all over it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've come from a festival background working with BAT TV and individual DJs, and we built the technology that kind of does what kind of Push does, but slightly differently.
Yeah.
And the way that they would traditionally do it, I think Adrian probably go into how they used to do it. When we came along with our product, they were like, "Oh my God, this is next level. Thank you very much. This fits as completely perfectly." So the way that they do it now, I mean, they did the Gorillas thing on Saturday.
Yeah.
That was insane amount of views. And because they do lots of associations with brands like Ballantine's and all these other sort of alcoholic drinks, because they seem to like live streaming.
Yeah.
So instead of just going to like the artist page and maybe the brand page and maybe the Boiler Room page, now it goes. It's like 150 different places from one event. What's quite funny is that you would think they did one which was basically with a big artist called Moby.
Yeah,
pretty heard of Moby. That only went to a couple of places, and then they did a live stream with some DJs from Cameroon, which are pretty underground, and that went to like 100 and odd places, and the views and the engagement on that was significant. We're talking like, I think Moby was around about sort of 500,000 for the, which today is not a lot in that space. But they came in at like 2.6 million.
But when you compare that to actual TV viewing figures now, those sort of figures wouldn't be uncommon when you're looking at TV viewing statistics now, which is I suppose brings me back to the point about where does live streaming end and live TV now begin? To me it's that there is so much of a blur, particularly when most of your TV content is coming down a digital connection now anyway, and you can pause and stop it and rewind it. That there is seemingly, as you guys are delivering, a big gap in the market to actually bridge that gap together. One thing, just looking at Boiler Room and on their website, Adrian, one of the first things that it says is that their whole concept began with a webcam taped to a wall. And that was their first sort of raw foray into the idea of streaming one of their events. Presumably now that the level of infrastructure that you've got to put in to deliver what you're doing, whilst you are bridging that gap, there must still be a vast amount of actual kit that's got to go in to be able to deliver what you're doing.
Yeah, so they have their own setups that they use when they fly away with their own filming gear. They do switching on site, and then they use some units to send that feed from that venue through to our servers.
Right.
And so they use something called LiveView, which uses standard mobile phone SIM cards, but the unit itself has got about 8 or 10 of these different cards in them. So it uses lots of different networks, and it distributes that feed over all those different networks. And that allows them to pretty much go to any country and use the same bit of kit from anywhere in the world.
Right.
It's just a matter of negotiating the mobile phone contracts of the different countries they end up going to. But effectively, all that content then comes back to us in Europe, and then from here we can then take that one feed effectively and then add the different types of branding they need. We had all their lower third graphics on our side, so they're not having to do all that stuff on site. And it means that all the transitioning from program to program, as those lower thirds are always visible on their programs, they don't sort of have a 30-second lower third which then disappears. It stays for the entirety of the program. And so they use the scheduling system within our platform to make sure that those transitions happen as soon as the DJ moves from one to the next. And so that is also synchronized all the distributions that can go out to Facebook. So you're not going to have a Facebook distribution incorrect graphic on the top saying this is with the wrong DJ name and that kind of stuff. So all of that kind of stuff gets loaded in. And some of the stuff they've been using recently is also using the tools that we have to sort of improve their production values a little bit by providing intros into each of the sets. So rather than just being a flat cut and then it starts on YouTube, you've got a nice introduction. You've got as the set plays out, and then as it ends, you've got the sort of the boiler room logo as the set comes to an end. And so basically providing those a better production feel when for viewers when they're viewing it online, and through Facebook as well. Most of the figures are from on demand. So once your event is over, normally they're sort of an hour and a half kind of programs. Then they sort of can promote those programs to viewers just using the normal sort of Facebook tools and that kind of stuff.
So it's very much bringing a more polished output to
exactly.
And improving the production value overall. Well, on a technical point, when you mentioned about being able to do this via the cloud, in a simple case of vision mixing, if you've got a dozen different cameras and you're just wanting to mix different feeds in and stuff like that, do you guys have the capability to actually take multiple camera feeds down a line and do all the vision mixing and stuff remotely, or the client, like with Boiler Room, perhaps it sounds like they could actually do that on site themselves and send you a single feed, at which point you're just doing a certain amount of the polishing at your end?
Exactly. So although that is possible, we generally use our features for switching between different stages, let's say at a festival. Right. So you can use that to curate the content. So for instance, we did the Notting Hill Carnival with Boiler Room. And so rather than showing all 4 stages continuously all the time on their YouTube, they'd cut between the different stages during the day, so you could tune into one broadcast and then switch, and then they'd curate that content during that broadcast. So we use that more for switching between larger locations than for actual vision mixing between different cameras, mainly because when you're dealing with that, there is a lag between what you're seeing on your computer and what's actually happening in real time. Sure. And so as a result of that, if you're communicating with your cameraman over radio saying, I want this and I want that, it takes a bit of time for that kind of stuff to happen. And when you're doing that on site, it means that communication is near instantaneous. So it's one of those things which we are working on. We're working with a company that does surfing events and that kind of stuff, and they use that option. So they have cameras which literally will have a transmitter on the back of them to then send those feeds back to base. And we're currently working with them at the moment with how to utilize that and maybe improve those systems. So although we don't have direct vision mixing at the moment, it's something that we are looking at. It's just working around those those technical issues when it comes down to sort of the discrepancy between a real-time feed and a live feed, as it were, which can be sometimes a few minutes behind what's actually real-time.
And I'm sure everybody can sort of put that into some sort of context. If you still put the radio on in your car, and it's just coming in via an FM, an FM receiver, it's totally live. You go into your house and you put your smart speaker on, and you start hearing the news that you were hearing 3 minutes ago sat in your car.
Exactly. Or watching the World Cup at the moment.
I had exactly that on Saturday when I was doing the Adidas live stream. I've got a pub across the road, and I was watching the World Cup on my TV, and I heard this, yeah! And because they scored so many goals that day,
yeah,
it was just like, all right. I was watching, I was going, all right, oh, it's great, they've scored another one. Now I've got to wait a minute and a half. Now my TV's going to now kick in, and I'm going to see what the goal's like. So it's like, oh man.
You've got to shut yourself away from everything.
That does actually question what is live at the moment. We find a lot of the people that we work with, initially they were like, we want it to be as live as possible. And then they started using the software, and they were like,
it depends on the broadcast.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're wanting to interact with your viewers in real time, then you need that lag to be as low as possible. But if the requirement is not necessarily there to have a direct interaction with viewers, then increasing that time forcibly means you can then add additional things on top. So you could perhaps time your events more. So for example, I'm going to go back to using the boiler room example, is when they transition from one DJ to the next, sometimes that cut point can be a little bit difficult to know, and so they use our time shifting feature within our platform, where we'll store the content in, and so therefore they'll end up streaming that content out about 5 minutes after it's been received.
I see.
It gives them an opportunity to rewind the feed to choose a point at which they then move from one DJ to the next DJ, so they can allow their presenter to do their introduction. Then they can rewind, choose a precise point in time that they want that transition to happen. That then gets recorded into the system, and then when it then gets played out, all those transitions are perfectly timed. And so it provides that kind of ability there as well. And sometimes, of course, they'll be doing a stream from Australia, which will be at 4 a.m. for European audiences, and then they'll record that into the system. They'll stream that out to just the Asia Pacific region, and then restream the content because it's already then loaded into our system, rebroadcast that content at a more appropriate time for European audiences, again using geolocation targeting to basically restrict the audience to just the European region. And so that means you can then sort of make the most of when your audiences are awake and that kind of stuff as well. So we talk about live broadcasting rather than live streaming, mainly because you're choosing when to broadcast your content using the live platforms rather than simply live streaming, let's say with Twitch, where people are more used to sort of the bi-directional interaction that you have directly with your audiences. So we're looking at these kind of things and the tools that, say, broadcast users. You see shows on the BBC that are recorded live, but they're not live, they are deferred live. And we also have features for broadcasters in our system. By making use of that time shifting capability, you can then add additional layers. So for instance, you're a brand that doesn't want any swearing on stream, but then you're capturing an event that you don't know where that content is. You can use that buffering period to say, okay, when we can bleep out that swear word or something like that, all using all that kind of those tools in the cloud. Again, so we're talking about taking those broadcast technologies and then applying it to those features, which you traditionally have to pay an absolute fortune for the hardware to be able to do, and that's comes natively in the way that we perform our stuff. Means that, okay, we can just add a filter here, so if we just do a bleep for 3 seconds and that's fixed, kind of thing. It becomes relatively straightforward.
Chris, I know that a lot of the references so far, and clearly your guys' experience has been with festivals and in the music realm, but just identifying with the key features and some of the stuff that you guys are talking about today and what your system is capable of doing. Clearly, there are wider event applications for this service, not just in the music realm.
Exactly. I mean, obviously we have a festival background, but there's no difference between a bunch of DJs playing at a festival or a bunch of speakers in a talk at an event. Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. It's just happens to be one happens to be music based and one happens to be a conversational piece. So in regards to the functionality of it, I think coming from a festival background and working with such complexities of those remote places and the way that timing and schedules don't really go according to plan, because we've built this thing to be able to like compensate and to overcome those problems. It lends itself to really any type of scheduled live event.
Yeah, and when you look at the money and the budgets that are being spent on big international conferences, trade shows, you look at things like the pharmaceutical industry, the banking industry. We're talking about brands that host multiple events in multiple countries, often at the same time. Straight away that there are clear opportunities for them to add what you guys are offering, which is a bit of magic fairy dust to really sort of polish it up and bring it up to a. Our
concern has always been, and our focus has always been on the audience, and presenting a broadcast or whatever you want to call it, a live stream broadcast, a webcast, webinar, etc. There's so many words these things now. Is always to produce and have technology that can make that viewing experience as pleasant as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a live stream today on LinkedIn, and someone was like, well, we've done a live stream, and I literally sat through, I think it was 8 minutes of the live stream starting shortly. Here's a word from our sponsor. And then it kicked in. I had to search on demand on YouTube to try and find where the content was, and I was like, that's just not the way you do it, and that gives live streaming a bad rep at the end of the day. And I don't think it shouldn't have a bad rep. It should be seamless, and it should be quality, and it should be approached in a way from what I'm used to and what Adie's used to, and probably yourself from watching television for so many years as a kid. Yeah, it's all polished, and like what I'm not too keen on with live streaming is this. It's almost like an afterthought, or here's a quick window into something that's happening now, where it can be so much more than that. It can be this. It can be a show, and we approach things as being shows or episodes and professional produced stuff. I mean, we talk about Boiler Room, and I mean their production. Like a lot of the dance music sort of stuff, it's pretty lo-fi.
Yeah,
but we've got the bits of tools within software to be able to repackage that and just to make it a little bit more like, this is nice. This feels good and this looks polished.
Yeah.
So,
I think when I, start to develop an understanding of what you guys are doing just in today's podcast and talking to you for 25 minutes or so, there's that feeling sometimes with the live stream that things are very, very static, that things are very, very fixed, and that is the image that you will see for the next 30 minutes or 1 hour, and you will have nothing else. But when you watch and you compare that to professionally produced live television, there is always that feeling of movement when you are watching. There's that feeling that you're not just sat in one fixed position. And I suppose if I'm right in understanding everything that you guys have said, that to me strikes me as one of the biggest differences, is taking away that feeling of being absolutely fixed and locked down and nailed into position to something that actually brings a little bit more movement and life to what you're watching.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that can be done in the production on the ground. So if you do have just a fixed camera at the back of a room, there's not much we can do to change that kind of feel. We can certainly top and tail it. We can provide graphical information that's pretty easy to add on the stream. But the thing with most of those things, the one thing that makes the biggest difference is by having a manned cameraman. So someone that can basically zoom into a speaker, zoom out to get an overview, even if that's still just one camera, but that one camera is manned by a camera operator. Makes all the difference, and it just makes that and then it then moves on sort of, okay, if you've got maybe not just the one camera but maybe two cameras, and then you've got a bit more opportunity, because then you can go from an interview situation where one person's speaking, then you can cut to the other person for their reply, and then while that's happening, the other camera can be repositioning. So there's a lot of things that you can do on the production on the ground which don't actually cost that much more from that perspective, and so once you get all the technical elements of getting that stream out, then the actual content production itself is pretty known quantity with regards to sort of improving that. And so you're talking about camera movements. I mean, yes, I mean, certainly you look at the sort of the festivals and that kind of stuff that we've been doing, and they use a lot of jibs, which are effectively cameras on cranes. So you get those nice sweeping shots of the camera going over the crowds and that kind of stuff. And again, it provides all that movement in camera. Again, I mean, that comes down still to the production on the ground. I mean, we're not sort of moving away from that. You're still going to need that kind of thing to sort of to really sort of make that production sing, if you will. But but then we can also then take away a lot of the need of having to do a lot of the effect of what you'd normally see in a post-production sense, like all the graphics and that kind of stuff. And they can be applied nice and easily to help create that production as it goes out to viewers. So we've got a lot of things in the system that provides tools for people. For instance, audio fingerprinting, which is a fingerprinting technology to identify music tracks that are playing. So if you're needing to do copyright reports and that kind of stuff, as to send those back to broadcasters or to the rights managers and that kind of stuff, then we have all those kind of tools in the system as well. So you're not having to manually write down tracks that people are playing and that kind of stuff. You can just download a report afterwards.
Amazing. I was going to ask from a delivery point of view, Chris, when you're actually working on a physical event, what's the manpower requirement like for you guys? Really?
It's the way that we deal with distribution is very unique. So basically, you would set up your event. Mm-hmm. You would schedule the times of the episode or the program. Let's go back to the festival thing, 'cause it's nice and easy for me to understand. So let's say you've got a festival and you've got 6 DJs. So you set that up in the system. You don't even need to be live streaming at that point.
Right.
We then just send a link to all the publishers that would like to live stream that event, and then that link that they get, they can say, I want to stream that DJ to my YouTube channel, my other Facebook page, etc., etc., etc. And they can pick and choose what they want, or they can stream the entire thing. And that's it. I just send a link. and then they do the rest. And then when it goes live, it automatically goes live over all their channels.
One other thing that I'm really, as we sort of rattling through today's episode, I'm conscious of time, but one thing I wanted to ask you from an artist uptake point of view, when you're working with music festivals where you've got, numerous artists who are coming to perform, I would guess that if I was an organizer speaking to the artists ahead of these events, that what you guys are now delivering for your clients is clearly a big seller as well for the artists, to be able to turn around to them and say, look, you tell us what your social media platforms are, and we can actually put live streams to wherever you want us to go to aid your own promotion.
Artists and managers love it.
Yeah.
They absolutely love it. And they also use it as well. I mean, the festival did at the weekend that they were using individual streams to go to the artist managers pages, not pages like publicly viewed, but so that they could actually see it and go, you know what? Yeah, I'm cool for my artist to stream, because otherwise they could turn around and say, you know what? He's not, get him off. Yeah. But this way they have complete control over what's going out for their artists. So it works in so many amazing ways for these guys, and they're just like, oh my God, this is fantastic. We did stuff at Creamfields, and they were like, they had some of the big DJs, and they were like, no, we're not streaming. And then as soon as they saw what was going out, they were like, yeah, we'll have that on our page. And then they use our push links, and we're like, yep, bang, there you go. And it was on there.
Of course, they can set that up from their mobile phone at the festival. So we've had artists or DJ managers that have basically held back on doing a live stream, and so then 10 minutes into the set, they then set the live stream up on their phone, and immediately we start sending to their Facebook page. But then let's say they only wanted to stream 20 minutes of their set, so 20 minutes later they then remove the distribution using their phone again, and then the distribution ends. So they can be in control of if they only want a 20-minute part of their 1 hour set to be streamed, then they are in control of that. And again, we can then provide those tools to the actual events themselves that maybe then remove those options. But I think most of the time having those options available are pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I think the festival we did last weekend, their strategy was fantastic. So basically they did 4 live streams every Friday on the build up to the event. Then they did the 3 stages, 70 plus DJs, 300 odd distributions, streamed it out live, had it on demand until today. And then today they were like, can all those distributions be taken off their social pages? Because we're now going to re-edit everything and do a new promotion for the festival in another week's time. So basically today we got rid of, I think it was 300 and odd. Because what you've got to understand with live streaming is it's like a 48-hour window of engagement, and then it dies off really pretty quickly because content these days is so fleeting. So it's not actually a problem. So you've got the live views, which are usually quite high, and then you've got the 24 hours later, or maybe 48 hours later, which is obviously ramps that right up. So doing it a couple of days later and removing those posts is actually quite a good strategy, really.
There's also audio rights that need to be considered as well. That's the thing. So I think there are some rights restrictions on some stuff. Like, for instance, the Gorillaz album they did the launch party at the weekend. The album hasn't released yet, and it releases on Friday. So that stream was up for 24 hours, basically to build that engagement. Because you do a live stream, not everyone in the world is awake. So you leave it up for 24 hours to 48 hours, and then it gives people the opportunity to view that content. And then it can get taken down afterwards. And then promotional stuff, additional promotional stuff then goes on after that as well. So, yeah.
Of course. Go on, Chris.
I was going to say, I think record labels are kind of getting into this. I mean, we did the Gorillaz one. We didn't do the Nas one, but Nas did it with Kanye West as well the week before, which is basically live streamed the premiere of the actual album, have it up for a couple of days, then get rid.
Yeah,
it's just what I enjoy about that is that it's kind of giving music and album releases kind of a thing now. Whereas before it was like you just stick it on your YouTube channel, and then you get a bunch of bloggers to talk about it, to link to it. Whereas now it's kind of like supercharges it. It's like, right, there's a live event happening. It's the new album. You're all fans. It's going out everywhere. Everyone jump on it, have a listen. We take it away. We build demand. We do our next thing. And I think that's quite a clever thing to do, really.
It is. Guys, we're coming to the end of time, and we are going to have to wrap it up. But the good thing about wrapping up an episode where I've still got a load of things to ask is that potentially means that the people listening and watching the podcast have got a load of things to ask as well, which is a good thing. Tell us how we get in touch with you. If anybody watching today's podcast wants to reach out to you guys.
Pushlive.com. Oh, no, push.com. That's so...
Yeah.
Push.live.
Push.live.
Push.live and our LinkedIn. I'm Chris Webb on LinkedIn. Adrian's actually not on LinkedIn.
Hey, somebody needs.
Adi might have a MySpace account or something.
Fantastic. Yeah, push.live is where to go, and I'm sure people who are listening and watching to today's episode have got questions and stuff that maybe has intrigued them, stuff that they want to find out more about. Get in touch with the guys. I'm sure they'd be delighted to hear from anybody working in the industry who thinks actually this sounds really intriguing. This sounds interesting. Where can I take live streaming to the next step? Because I've been doing it at events and I want to maybe do it just that little bit better. And it sounds like you guys have got the means to do that. So thank you very much for joining the podcast today. The podcast itself is brought to you by our own sponsor, Engage, powered by D2I Systems, winner of Best Event Management Platform at the 2017 Event Technology Awards. To learn how Engage can make your business more profitable, visit d2isystems.com/engage. You can also head over to eventindustrynews.com and keep up to date with all the latest content, features, and these podcasts that go out via Event Industry News. Find us on all of the usual social media networks. Just search for Event News Blog or Event Industry News and you will stumble across us in just a matter of moments. I'm sure you will. Thanks very much for listening today. Thanks again to our guests, Chris Webb and Adrian Eaton from Push. Been talking to us today about live streaming. Great subject, and no doubt something we're going to be talking about again in future as we keep an eye on what these guys are up to. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode of the podcast. Goodbye.